The arrest, and then subsequent release without charges, of Rebel News reporter David Menzies has created international headlines for good reason. And I'm going to make the argument, it's so much worse than what you just saw. World, Canada is not a first world country for journalism. Is it like, a corrupt African dictatorship? No, I'm not going to be that alarmist. But there's a gap between where it should be there and where Canada is. It's not a first world journalistic country. You saw that. Okay, so David Menzies goes up to Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister, an elected official, and asks her a question about the IRGC, which she promised to list as a terrorist organization in 2018 and has neglected to do so despite multiple terrorist attacks by the IRGC directed at Canadian citizens. Okay, perfectly legitimate question. Now, he was being aggressive. You don't have the right to harass a reporter. If you're running for office anywhere in Canada, you have the right, and it's aggressive journalism. It's a style of journalism. You don't have to like it, but it's legal. Anyone can go up to, if you see Pierre Poilievre on the street, and you're mad at him. You're like, Pierre Poilievre, what do you think about the environment and the carbon tax? And aren't we all going to die in 15 minutes because Greta Thunberg told me so? You have the right to do that. And then it's Pierre Poilievre's responsibility, as someone who's trying to assume leadership of the country, to handle that situation. Now, he can ignore it and walk by, say, not now. Like, he can do it. He can't go and punch her. And the cops can't come and throw this woman in a gulag. And what's worse than what happened to David Menzies in the moment, in my opinion, is everything that happened before and everything that happened after it. You see a bunch of Canadian press journalists coming out and go, Rebel News isn't real news. Yes, okay, they have a center-right slant to their news. And you have a center-left slant to your news. Is this, they get things wrong? Yeah, Rebel News has got things wrong over their career. Multiple shooters in the Quebec mosque shooting. They got that one wrong. They've also done some real legitimate journalism. Who uncovered the fact that the Canadians were training the Chinese PLA in winter combat? Rebel News. Got that story out there. Okay, so the courts have ruled in Rebel News' favor because this isn't the first time that the Liberal government has gone after Rebel News. As I said, everything before and after is worse. To understand the Trudeau government's entire censorship, or what they're doing right now, you have to look at it in the context of what they've been doing since 2015. It's been a priority of the Liberal government under Justin Trudeau to monopolize the flow of information. And they've done it in multiple ways. The most famous one was the $600 million bailout to the mainstream media to preserve independent media. Yes, by having the government funding something, it makes it independent. And then they'll say, I'm mixing things, but they'll always say something about, we need to protect Canadian this, Canadian content, Canadian this. Whenever you hear the Canadian government talk about Canadian content, what that means is content regulated by the Canadian government. It doesn't mean content created by the Canadian people. That's what it means. So everything falls under government purview. So what the Liberals are trying to do is get more and more and more journalists under government purview. And if you go under government purview and you walk the line, you have all the freedoms of any journalist anywhere. You can ask questions, you can go this, but if you play within this box, right? And media outlets like Rebel News, like True North, new independent ones, were playing outside the box. So they sued them, and they tried to bar them from their press conferences when they were running for office. And the Canadian courts ruled in the favor of these journalistic outlets, media outlets, which have the right to be there. So, no. We've ruled that, yes, Rebel News has the right to ask questions of politicians, so does everyone else. This is Canadian law, okay? But you see many journalists and establishment types trying to convince you otherwise. David Menzies was so out of bounds here. And just walk by David Menzies. You don't have to. You could do if you're Chrystia Freeland, you can go. Rebel News is racist. You're promoting transphobia. I won't answer questions of this. And then your side would be like, yes, way to stand up to Rebel News, who's asking a legitimate question about a terrorist organization that's murdered Canadians and continues to harass them and undermine their national interests. And you supported trans rights, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran in some way. You could do that. You cannot have your thugs pounce on Menzies and throw him in jail as an intimidation tactic. That is what you cannot do. But the Liberals have been going under this full push to monopolize the flow of information. So they fund, and there's been tons and tons, there's billions that flowed from the Canadian government into the hands of the major media establishment. And you saw the results of that in the Freedom Convoy, where journalists were just outright pulling pieces and footage and then hours later putting up the government narrative because, there was a complete fatwa on the truth within the establishment media and the convoy, which was why alternative media became so big there. We were there just filming, showing you what was happening on the ground. This is what they're talking, people could see that. Then it became, oh no, news is a problem because if people keep getting independent media, which could be anyone, like anyone can kind of be a journalist these days. Like you have a cell phone, like you have a camera. Like this isn't the 1920s where like you'd have to like really invest in a camera and save your shots and know how to develop them and be economical. Like ding, 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 record. This happened here. Like, so to protect Canadian content, which is content regulated by the government, they started the new bills, the C11 and C18. So this is like the Online Streaming Act, where they're trying to get, one, all internet content that streams, like videos like this, regulated under Canadian content and news content. So I would have to submit these to government regulations, and because I won't do that, I'm not Canadian content, then I don't get promoted in Canada. That's another way to depress content that is, outside the purview, but still pretend to have alternative media because it'll just be regulated alternative media. And then you have C18, which wants to protect the journal. Oh, because, guys, don't you believe now how much Trudeau loves journalism? Don't you believe it now? Don't you believe it? Trudeau just loves journalism so much? And it's the big tech companies that are stealing from us. Of course. This is what Trudeau's claiming. Oh, he really wants to protect journalists. You really believe that. If you believe that, you should be deported. This mighty thing. Just deport everyone. He's going to give money from Facebook and Google and whatever to the news people who are stealing it. That's not how it works. It's so dumb. But what happened? He made news on Meta and soon to be Google financially inviable for these companies in Canada. So we just don't see the news. Win for Trudeau. And he gets to pretend that he's defending journalism the entire time. And because he has that funded tunnel of acceptable opinions, they keep on promoting and promoting and promoting. So every journalist who is not defending David Menzies and Rebel News here is a traitor, is an absolute traitor to the profession. And you're undermining journalism. You're taking away your own freedoms. And in 10 years, when this all comes back and blows up in your face and you're screaming to the hills, I will be there to say, I told you so. I told you so. You created the situation in which journalists didn't have rights depending on who likes them and who doesn't like them and if they had opinions outside the norm or not. Because sooner or later, the Overton window of acceptable opinions is going to exclude literally everyone but the most insane person imaginable. And you'll be on that list. And we will say, I told you so. So, Canada, if you want to support the National Telegraph, what do, there's a link in my bio and description. You can support there. Canada's really, really, really broken. And we should fix it. I like that Polyev tweeted it out. That was a nice start, but it's bad. It's bad. SOS. Help us, world.